Hello, Year 6. Welcome to our history lesson. We're looking today at the causes of World War One. We're going to build upon our knowledge of Queen Victoria's reign and the situation within Victorian times to understand what was going on in the world in 1914, and then to understand how we can explain how the war was caused. First thing I want you to do is get a piece of paper and write WW1 to symbolize World War One. And then around the outside of World War One, can you write down anything you think you already know about that time period? Anything you think you already know about what happened then? I'll give you 5 minutes. So pause your video for 5 minutes, please. As we come back now, hopefully some of you have got an idea who the protagonists were, so which countries were involved. Maybe you have an idea of who was involved and what caused it. Maybe you know when it happened as well. If you were really eagle-eyed, you might have picked up a year already. Okay, now, first job for us today within our new learning is we can look at this timeline, which starts in 1901 and finishes in 1989 when the World Wide Web was invented. We can see when World War II was between 1939 and the year 6 years later. We can see when we landed on the moon in 1969. Now, I'd like you to identify where you think World War One should go on this timeline. Have a think. What do you know about it? Will it be before or after 1945? If you've identified before, well done. Hopefully now you can identify roughly where it will be. If not, this will help you, okay? Because now you can see that it was 1914 to 1918. I did mention it earlier that it started in 1914. It's also known as the Great War for many reasons, which we'll come to over the next few weeks. But today we're thinking about what had happened to cause it. Now, before that war, many leaders knew it was coming. It was one of these things that people could predict even before it happened. Okay, if you look at modern Europe, you can see that there's lots of different colours on our map of modern Europe. If you look at in 1914, there are fewer colours. Those colours represent the empires that were existing. Okay, within those empires, there were alliances. Okay, there was this thing called the Triple Entente, which was three countries, France, Britain, and Russia, and they were against the Triple Alliance: Germany, Austria-Hungary, which was one country back then, and Italy. Okay, and you can see if you look at the map that there were military alliances. So between those groups of three countries, there was an agreement that they would work together. Okay, the idea was they protected each other, and then if one of the countries was under attack, the others would support that country. The others in that alliance would support that country to fight against the attacking powers. Okay, and this was the agreement within this. Okay, now these countries were not weak countries on their own; they were powerful countries. And they had powerful empires in Europe, okay? And this links to some of our knowledge of Victoria and why empires would have existed. Now, these countries wanted to make their empires bigger because bigger meant more powerful. Germany was building a powerful navy, and the power of the navy had been one of the great strengths of the Victorian British Empire, okay? And the people who were in these empires were starting to strike out for their own independence, starting to try and establish some of their own sovereignty and their own ability to make their own choices. Now, in late June 1914, on the 28th of June, the heir, so the person who was going to be taken over the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and his wife were assassinated. Now, assassinated means they were killed deliberately. They were targeted. Somebody chose to shoot them. And it was a Serbian assassin. So Serbia was deemed to be responsible in this area of what is now Bosnia. Okay, now Serbia had supported the Bosnian desire to gain independence. One of these countries that was seeking independence, and helped recruit the assassins and plan the attack. Now, this is sometimes referred to as the shots that began the First World War. So by shooting these people, a chain of events is perceived as happened, which caused this war that killed so many people. Now, the empire was sure that the Serbian governments were involved, and therefore so the Austro-Hungarian Empire, with their alliance with Germany, they declared war on Serbia a month later. So 1 month later, on the 28th of July, they declared war. Now, because they'd said they'd fight, Russia then said that they would defend Serbia, honouring their alliance with Austria-Hungary. Germany then decided that it had to have its war with Russia. So because of these shots in Sarajevo, these countries had aligned to defend or attack one another, and that war then began. France's alliance with Russia in the Triple Entente meant that they began mobilising, started moving their military to help Russia. In response, Germany then started to fight on the 3rd of August, and that was the beginning of the war. Okay, so although they were part of an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary, Italy actually remained neutral. Neutral means they're not on either side. Their agreement was to come to aid if somebody was attacked. Okay, only if somebody was attacked. Now, in an attempt to bypass or go around France's forces on the border between France and Germany, the German armies cut through Belgium, which was another neutral country. Now, Belgium had not been involved in the fighting, but lots of people were killed in Belgium. They were killed and forced to flee, to become refugees from their home. Now, because this had happened, Britain was not happy. Britain was unhappy about the invasion of a neutral country. It perceived itself to be looking after the interests of the world, and therefore on the 4th of August, Britain declared war and came to the aid of those members of the Triple Entente. For 4 years, so for as long as you've been in Key Stage 2, so from when you were in year 2 to now, many other countries would join or leave the war. As the war developed, so as the war moved on and more countries joined either side, the Triple Alliance became known as the Central Powers. So rather than triple, because there was more than 3, it became the Central Powers. If you see, it's down the middle of Europe. And the Triple Entente became known as the Allied Powers. You can see in 1914, Japan and the Ottoman Empire joined. In 1915, Italy and Bulgaria. Portugal came in 1916, the USA and Greece in 1917, and Brazil and China as well. So all over the world, this was attack, and this development of the war happened. We can see over the passage of time how it would have spread, not from just this place in Sarajevo, but how it's morphed all around the globe, all around the world. People were affected by it. So those shots that started the war on the 28th of June, those 2 assassinations that took place, had morphed into this ginormous event that had caused a war which would last, as I said, for 4 years, so more than 1,200 days. Now, if you look at this map, you can see where there were neutral powers, you can see where there are central powers, and you can see where there are allied powers. So I'd like you to have a think, looking at the participants, so the countries which took part in that war. What do you learn about them? What do you learn about the allied powers? What do you learn about the central powers? What can you see about the neutral powers? Can you see a continent which doesn't have much involvement? There's 6 ideas here about why it might have been caused. What's the main reason? There's not really a right or a wrong answer here. I'd like you to read through these 6 ideas and decide which one you think is the correct one. I'd like you to write that down as a sentence. I think the main reason was this, because of this. So tell me which one you think. Pause the video while you think about it. Now, in addition to that sentence, you've got 2 tasks. First of all, you've got to complete this sheet. Now, this sheet shows what you've learned about the World War I, and it's got some language at the bottom that could help you with this. In addition, you've got a research task. If you're able to access some form of access to the internet, it's probably going to be useful for this. Now, what I'd like you to do for the second task is there's some flags that were the flags from 1914 for the various countries which were involved in the First World War. Now, I'd like you to pick one of these flags, or maybe 2. Draw an image of that flag at the time, so you can see that the German Empire's flag was different to how the German flag is now. And the Austro-Hungarian Empire doesn't exist now. So it's made up of flags which look quite similar to the Austrian and and Hungarian images, and the Chinese flag is also different. So have a look at those flags, and then could you complete a fact file for that country in 1914? So who was in charge? How big was its empire if it had an empire? How many people were part of that country and part of that empire? Who were its allies? Who was it against? So could you complete a bit of an information sheet for one of those? Right, guys. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your research, and I look forward to speaking to you about another subject later on. Thank you, Year 6.